El Secreto de sus Ojos is one of the best crime dramas ever made. It's not just a powerful story, but also acts as a snapshot into Argentina's history, documenting a dark era of corruption. It received both critical and commercial success in its homeland, it was well received internationally, and even won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Film.
El secreto de sus ojos, The Secret in Their Eyes, Argentina, Juan José Campanella.
By most metrics, this is a fantastic film and one of my own personal favorites. However, the 2015 American remake is an absolute trash fire of a film. It takes what should be a fantastic story and fails to tell it in any meaningful or captivating way. But the film does serve one purpose. It helps us answer the question, what if El Secreto de sus Ojos was bad? So why was this film even made? Well, it begins at the 2009 Oscars. The original film was making the rounds as Academy members saw and voted for the film. One of these members was producer Mark Johnson, who, after seeing it win the gold, called up director Billy Ray to see if he could adapt it for American audiences. And if you believe the media, Billy Ray was a hot young director with a lot of experience under his belt.
And Heather and Tina, he is a hot young director right now, Billy Ray. Do you remember the first Hunger Games?
Yes.
He wrote it and directed it.
Oh, I didn't know
You remember
that.
Tom Hanks in Captain Phillips?
Yep.
He wrote it, directed it, and was nominated for an Oscar. So he's really a very talented, hot young director right now.
Yeah, one problem with that, Jim. He did not direct any of those films. I mean, he did write those films, so you are partially correct. But you can't just be out here telling lies and fibs on air. At least he's hot and young, right?
Yeah, well, Billy Ray, as you mentioned, he's not that young in person, but...
Jim, please! When it comes to actually directing, Billy did have a few films under his belt. Breach and Shattered Glass were both pretty decent films. However, his real claim to fame is the Nicole Kidman AMC ad, a classic piece of American cinema. I'd argue that Billy does have some skill in directing, so what happened here? Well, it's the same issue that plagues many foreign film remakes, the compulsive need to make it as American as possible.
And I was going to make some changes to his movie. I was going to make sort of a more muscular version, I thought, a more American version of the story. I felt like we could make a more muscular version of that story, a more American version of that story. More of a thriller, less of a love story. So here's this opportunity to take those great themes that Juan Campanella wove into his movie and yet put them in a very different kind of chassis. You know, this more muscular, more American version of the story. More of a thriller, less of a love story.
But I did feel that there was an opportunity there to tell a more muscular story than Juan had been trying to tell, a more American story. I mean, I guess in its simplest terms, a thriller more than a love story.
Yeah, on top of being a crime drama, the original was also kind of a romantic film. But romance isn't relatable to American audiences, I guess, so Billy removed it in favor of making it more of a thriller. Except he also forgot to put in any thrills. He just added a lot of Islamophobia because, you know, 9/11 was bad.
Think positive, Ray. Maybe Al-Fawi did the murder. We can arrest him without him having to blow something up first.
Like, yeah, I guess there was an extra chase scene and a shootout, but it pales in comparison to the single chase scene in the original. and we'll cover that massacred scene when we get there. As you'll come to see, almost every filmmaking aspect, from cinematography to editing to story pacing, is not just done worse by comparison, but on its own, it's fundamentally flawed and makes for an aggravatingly boring experience. I'm going to be going over both films here, so obviously if you haven't seen the original, I highly recommend you do so right now. Fair warning, the story does revolve around a rape-murder case, so if you're sensitive to these topics, you might want to sit this one out. I won't show any images of it here, but the topic is unavoidable. So, without further ado, here is El Secreto de sus Ojos versus The Secret in Their Eyes. The film opens up with a familiar but visually confusing scene. A man leaves on a train while a woman chases after him, all while a melancholic song plays in the background. Most of the scene is blurry, but does come into focus on certain body parts. The scene is then revealed to be something our main character is writing about. While most of what's on the page is what we see, the final sentence does reveal a bit more about the emotions of the character. When translated, it reads, "She shrunk on the platform until she was small in his eyes, but ever bigger in his heart." As one might expect, eyes play an important role in this film, mainly with how they connect with the truth. You can try and act one way, but your eyes will always reveal your true feelings. Our main character isn't satisfied with what he's written, so he throws it away and starts a new scene. This one involves a married couple having breakfast, with his narration revealing it takes place in 1974.
El 21 de junio de 1974 fue el último día que Ricardo Morales desayunó con Liliana Coloto. Y durante el resto de su vida recordó cada detalle de esa mañana.
He ends up throwing this scene away too. The final scene he writes is that of the wife being raped, and it's a painful thought for him. Before we move on to the remake, I want to focus on the day he writes about, June 21st of 1974. This story takes place 10 days before the president of Argentina, Juan Perón, would pass away. His death would begin the country's slow downward spiral into political violence and corruption. You can enjoy the film without having to know much about Argentina's history, but having this knowledge allows you to appreciate the film on a deeper level. I'd say this is a pretty strong opening. We've set up some mysterious scenes that will be given context later on in the film, and established an important historical time frame for the story. So let's see what the remake did. Right off the bat, you'll notice the film omits both the train scene and the main character writing a novel. Now, when Billy said he was trying to make less of a love story, he wasn't kidding. The man was on a personal mission to scrub out any romance this story could have, and the train scene was the first on the chopping block. A remake that tries something unique to distinguish itself from the original is a good thing. However, Billy does not commit to his own bit, because he still has a romance subplot. He just took out all the best, most effective parts. As for the novel writing, the original film used it as kind of a narrative device to switch between past and present events. So now the remake has to find its own unique way to structure its timelines, and we'll see what they do with that very soon. Anyways, our main character here is also being plagued by memories of someone being assaulted. Instead of foreshadowing scenes, we foreshadow items here instead, and it comes off as confusing without context and goofy with context. Look at this email, look at this comic book, look at this photo, look at whatever the hell this is. I'm sure that one's gonna be real important. During all this, he's also looking over photos from a criminal database, looking for a specific person. And no, you're not convincing me this guy is 4'6", or this guy, or any of the multiple people also listed as 4'6". Was there an epidemic of dwarfs committing crimes in 2015? Why is this the most common height here, Billy? Just cuz? Eventually, he finds a match for his guy, ending this scene. It's clear Billy is trying to change things up and make this his own unique thing. but I fail to see how essentially doing less is going to improve our experience. In the original, there were neat details you could miss on your first watch, giving the film some replayability, whereas in this film, the only details you'll uncover are Billy's anti-dwarf sentiments. And that's not the only prejudice you'll find in this film. The opening is just less visually interesting, with foreshadowing that is offensively blatant. The changes I mentioned here may not be all that important for some, but as we continue, you'll see that these issues just keep adding up until you start to question, what is this film even trying to accomplish? With that said, let's get back to the original. Our main character, who we learn is named Benjamin Esposito, meets with an old friend, Irene Hastings, who currently serves as a judge. Their close friendship is immediately apparent. The actors themselves have some great chemistry, having worked together in previous films that were also directed by this film's director, Juan Jose Campanella. But also, the film itself has a great script, constantly filled with realistic ribbing that one would expect from close friends.
Más leche que café para mí, por favor.
Ah, cierto que estás con ese temita. ¿Cómo era lo que tenías? ¿Vejez? Más leche que café para el señor que está con un temita de vejez.
During their conversation, Esposito mentions he's trying to write a novel about the Morales case, which makes Irene visibly uncomfortable. He also mentions he's having trouble with starting the project, to which she tells him to write about what he remembers most from that time. This sparks a memory of their first meeting, where we can see he has feelings of more than just friendship for her. Notably, this memory takes place within the scene itself, as Irene actually comments on it.
Che, te colgaste.
This constantly happens throughout the film. We're shown flashbacks of the story, either because the characters remember them during conversations, or because they're reading the scenes from Esposito's novel. It's a small detail, but it really helps with the pacing of the film. We're able to flow seamlessly between past and present events. It's never a jarring transition that takes you out of the film. That's a little bit of my own foreshadowing, by the way. So we're back in 1974. Working as a judiciary agent, Esposito and his partner, Pablo Sandoval, are put in charge of handling a murder case. Believing this was a mistake, he confronts a workplace rival who tells him he intentionally switched their cases. He meets up with one of the inspectors, and they walk towards the crime scene. He starts going on a pretty funny rant about how much of a moron his rival is.
Algo que disfruto en esta vida es que el pelotudo del juez me manda a ver una muerta.
Vamos entrando.
Ojo que hay miles de pelotudos, ¿eh? Está el pelotudo tranquilo, pacífico, que sabe que es un pelotudo. No jode para que no lo jodan, hace su vida, pero no hincha las pelotas.
¿Cómo anda, inspector? Casualmente, hablando de vos.
Not only is this a crime drama and a romantic film, but it also manages to inject some comedy in there. Of course, it's used to relieve some tension in an otherwise dark story, but it's also used deceptively like in this scene. We become disarmed as we hear this guy go off on his boss and coworker, something that many of us can relate to. So when we finally get to the crime scene, we're just as stunned as he is. He's told the details of the victim, but ignores them as he looks at the photos in her room. Her life was more than just a list of facts. She was happy. She was married. She lived a fulfilling life outside of this crime. Before entering the room, he was going to ask the inspector to try and get him off the case. But after seeing the scene, he actually offers to tag along and tell the husband what's happened. The news is deeply upsetting to him, and the man emotionally shuts down. They try to get a timeline of the day from him, but his mind drifts to happier moments. The sound of a kettle whistling breaks into the scene and takes us back to the present. Once again, looking at the page he's writing, we get an extra detail. The paragraph ends with a line, "If Morales could start to contemplate his own future, he would no doubt find his future was full of nothing." This line effectively sets up Morales' actions for the rest of the film, and becomes a major theme of the story. That was all pretty great, so let's see how the remake does this Our main character, Ray Caston, takes a trip down to the courthouse. He meets an old work rival who you can tell is going to be the antagonist because he's bald. Eventually, he meets his old friend Claire, and they talk about nothing really. There's no friendly banter, there's no conversation over coffee, it's just, hey, it's been a long time. Yes, it has. And then we cut to 13 years ago. We haven't established their relationship or why he's even here, but fuck it, we're going back in time. And if this transition wasn't egregious enough, we also get to hear a bit of George Bush's 9/11 speech.
We will do whatever is necessary to protect America.
And no, this sound is not diegetic. There's no TV playing it in the scene. It's literally just for the audience. Yeah, that's not a jarring transition that takes me out of the film at all. Thank you, Billy. Very cool. And listen, this film is really going to beat you over the head with this event. Because as a wise idiot once said, 9/11 was the theme of the decade. And it makes sense. Ray is an FBI counterterrorism agent investigating a local mosque. But that's kind of my point. The effects of the terrorist attack are already noted in the dialogue, and it feels natural there because their jobs are literally in the crossfire of this issue. Do we really need this extra voiceover that essentially just says, 9/11 was bad? Subtlety really isn't in Billy's vocabulary. Okay, so in 2002, Ray is working with police officers like Julia Roberts, Michael Kelly, and Hank, making sure that Muslims in the area aren't up to any shenanigans. Nicole Kidman is the new girl at the office, and the two of them have this drawn-out, awkward conversation, with the implication being that he has a crush on her.
It was nice to meet you.
Yes.
Claire. Yeah?
Yes.
I'm right, I said that. Okay.
I guess that works, but you could have also gone the simple route, where we can see he has feelings for her based on the look he gives her with his eyes. Almost like it's an important aspect of the film. But what do I know? I'm just a dumb audience member. So the scene ends with Ray copping a peek at Claire as she gets her photo taken. Very cool, very quirky, not creepy in the slightest. Thanks, Billy.
Smile.
That's cringe! Why would they cast him?
Real quick, let me mention a funny interaction Billy had with this film. The remake changed our couple to be an interracial one, which is fine. It's never noted in the film cause it's just a normal thing. However, Billy is still oddly self-congratulatory over this little change.
What's totally thrilling to me is that it is a love story in which there are so many obstacles between Ray and Claire, and nobody ever mentions race as one of them. That really meant a lot to me. I haven't had a single question about it, in all the press that I've done for the movie.
And it leads to a very funny moment in the Blu-ray commentary.
Two people who are attracted to each other. One thing I want to say is that it's been completely thrilling to me as we show the movie to the press. No one ever talks to me about race. You've got an African-American man and a Caucasian woman, and it's a love story in the middle of this big thriller, and no one ever talks about...
African-British.
Yeah, African-British, right.
African-British Nigerian.
God damn it, Mark, I'm trying to build a moment here. Sorry, Billy, not everyone can be from America. I have nothing to say about the interracial change, but Billy's weak appeal to progressive themes that aren't even there in the first place, that's pretty funny to me. Okay, now we're back in the present. This whole scene was just to establish how they met, and it said less about their relationship while taking more time than the original. The characters don't acknowledge this flashback since it was just for the audience, so we're thrust back mid-conversation. Not that there was much of a conversation going on anyways. The character Jess walks into the room, which prompts Ray to reveal why he's here. He wants to reopen a murder case involving her daughter, believing he's found the killer. Again, we get shot back in 2002. Jess mocks Ray for having a crush on Claire, and honestly, I would do the same. A body is found near the mosque they're spying on, and they rush to it. On the way there, we get some tasteful bombing jokes, and some terrorism news on the radio. Did you guys know this takes place after 9/11? Anyways, we enter into the only decent scene of the film, the discovery of the body. It doesn't achieve the same impact as the original, but it has its own merits. The scene isn't as graphic, but I say that as more of an observation rather than a critique. The culprit actually bleached the body to hide any evidence, so there is a purpose to this. While I think Julia Roberts gives a terrible performance in this film, this scene is an exception. In fact, there is one effective moment here that I think I'll let Billy Boy explain.
And in between takes, she said to me over the walkie-talkie, you know, it might be really good if I had those blue investigative gloves on, like Chiwetel does. And then when I go into the dumpster, I have to take them off because I want to feel my daughter. And I thought, okay, first of all, that's the greatest idea I've ever heard. Thank God.
And I'll admit, it works. But also, let's keep in mind that this was a Julia Roberts idea, not the guy directing the film. Okay, I've said enough nice things, now I can make some complaints. Obviously, the remake changed the victims of the case from being a wife and husband to a daughter and her mother. And I kind of don't like that. At least not this trend with modern American remakes. There's no easier way to tug at American heartstrings than centering your conflict around a parent and their child.
You've changed who the murder victim is, and you changes the emotional stakes drastically. It makes it more relatable from the audience level.
A similar thing was done with the Oldboy remake. The original film depicted a man succumbing to the brutal temptation of revenge and letting it engulf his life, while the remake turned it into an absent father, bettering himself and trying to save his daughter.
He is so moved by watching his daughter play the cello that he decides to stop drinking and be a better person. This is a movie for American audiences. We can't have him motivated by revenge. Let's have him motivated by just how much he loves his daughter. He loves his family so much, and that's what American audiences want.
Also, sorry, I know this is supposed to be one of Billy's favorite scenes, but I find it kinda goofy when we pan over to the police officer, and he starts looking back as if he's wondering if he's supposed to be in this shot. So we're back to the present, and Ray shows him the person he thinks is the culprit. And then we get another flashback. Yeah, there have been 3 flashbacks during this entire conversation. None of them have been placed properly, and only one of them was actually important to the story. The flashbacks work better in the original because Campanella actually took the time to flesh out the dialogue for each time period, because they're both important. But in the remake, it genuinely feels like we're speedrunning through these flashbacks just to get back to the present. But why? Why, Billy? Jess apprehensively agrees so long as they actually catch him this time, but Claire isn't convinced. Until a second later when she is and reopens the case. The remake is only about 5 minutes ahead of the original right now, but it feels way longer. The storytelling is way messier, and there's an obvious lack of chemistry, which isn't surprising when you make the character such a weirdo. It's not looking good so far, so let's get back to the better version. We're back in 1974, where the main characters are blowing off some steam by mocking their boss. Again, you can tell a relationship is forming here just by the way they look at each other, with their eyes. A scene like this is never attempted in the remake, I guess because it's being more muscular. The rival reveals he's solved the case, with 2 men confessing to the crime. Esposito isn't convinced, so he takes a trip down to the precinct and finds both men beaten, having been forced to confess through torture. The 2 men have an altercation, with Esposito leaving to file a complaint against him. And it actually works. This is the last we'll see of the rival for a while, and symbolically it demonstrates that there was a form of justice in Argentina prior to its downward spiral. We also learn that Esposito's partner, Sandoval, is an alcoholic, and that he's constantly having to cover for him at the bar. This problem has put a strain on Sandoval's marriage, so he constantly has to sleep at his friend's house. We see our main character is still obsessed over this case, so he ends up visiting Morales to learn more about his wife. Instead of looking at photos of her corpse, he gets to look at photos of her life. Eventually, their conversation enters the topic of criminal punishment.
¿Qué va a ser? Acá pena de muerte no hay.
Yo no estoy de acuerdo con la pena de muerte.
No, yo tampoco. Pensé que a lo mejor para usted era como una retribución o algo así.
¿Retribución? ¿Que lo van a violar y lo van a matar a golpes como hizo con ella? No. Le darían una inyección y se quedaría dormido lo más pancho. Es muy injusto. ¿Sabe lo que daría yo por una inyección así?
As he continues looking at the pictures, he finds a guy who is always looking at her. Thanks to the labeling system, he learns his name is Isidoro Gomez. This scene ends with a close-up on his eyes. Back in the present, Irene finishes reading this draft of the novel. They even talk about the theme of eyes within his story. When asked about why he's writing this novel now, he reveals that the last 20 years of his life had been uneventful for him. He's done his job, gotten married and divorced, but now in retirement age, he's alone and still obsesses over the unresolved Morales case.
Yo sé que a vos no te pasa, no te pido que me entiendas. Créeme. Y tratando de encontrar los porqués, los momentos, todo, absolutamente todo me lleva a Morales.
As Irene leaves the cafe, our main character continues reading and writing. After their conversation, Morales believes Gomez is the man behind the crime. He calls his house only to reach his mother. He pretends to be an employer looking to hire Gomez in order to get more info on him. However, it quickly becomes evident that Gomez may actually be the culprit.
Él le gustaba mucho esa chica. Pero después ella se fue a Buenos Aires y no se vieron más, creo yo.
This scene is just so gut-wrenching, and Pablo Rago does an incredible job portraying the sad realization Morales goes through. Unfortunately, this call only tips off Gomez that he's under suspicion. The investigators try to reach him as fast as possible, but he's already left. Esposito attempts to get a search warrant for some letters in Gomez's mother's house in Chivilcoy, but his boss refuses to help him. Nevertheless, he and his partner stake out the place until the mother leaves. They sneak in and find the letters, but before they can go through them all, she arrives back home. And some great cinematography is used to film their escape. On the drive home, Esposito wishes he could have read all the letters, to which Sandoval reveals he actually stole them. Our main character is furious since they are now breaking the law. If it wasn't apparent already, the name Morales actually translates to morals. And right now, our main characters have to break the law, break their own moral code, to solve the case. Within this section I've covered, there have been various great scenes. Some that contextualize the time period, others have fleshed out the story and the characters, exploring their flaws and motivations. It's all really well done. So let's see how the remake did this. We're back in 2002, and Ray is helping Jess move out of her house. They talk about new developments with the case, which makes her sad, and she leaves for the garage. Similar to the original, they find a photo of her daughter at the company picnic, with a random guy looking at her. Another major change in this story that I've yet to mention is that our main character is friends with the victims of the case. It offers an explanation as to why he's obsessed with the case so many years later, but it doesn't really add much else. You're kind of just told they're friends and you're supposed to believe it. In the original, you could see that a bond was forming from this terrible tragedy. Learning more about their life, Esposito feels compelled to help someone at their lowest point. And, in my opinion, there's something more compelling about someone helping a complete stranger. In a world filled with injustice, people can only rely on each other, coming to the aid of those with less resources. So we're back in the present again. Jess and Ray get their old friend Bumpy on board to help them solve this case. And then we're back to the past. Again. Okay, let's pause for just a minute. These constant shifting timelines are sloppy, yes, but they also accidentally emphasize another of the film's issues. It's been 13 years and these characters look pretty much the same. Pay close attention and you might see the white in Chiwetel's hair. You can easily mistake this for some white lighting, but at least it's something. I genuinely cannot see any difference with Nicole Kidman. And yeah, you've been seeing clips from the original, this is not an issue there. In fact, the makeup job is genuinely impressive. Ray asks everyone in the office if they know the person in the photo, but soon resorts to using CT software, and he narrows it down to someone at the mosque. And he gives this information over to District Attorney Martin Morales. Oh, come on, really? American remakes love referencing their source material without actually understanding their significance. Thanks, Billy. Very cool. So he gives this info over to Alfred Molina? Dude, you gotta fire your agent. I don't know how they're roping you into all these shitty films. So this Morales is concerned that the information might reflect poorly on their department, considering he was at the company picnic. But he insinuates that the info might be kept under wraps. Ray's upset, but ultimately can't do much about it. Before he leaves, his rival mentions he has someone who's confessed to the murder. He takes a trip to the precinct and finds some random guy who is perfectly fine. Because obviously, Americans never torture anyone, am I right, fellas? The original film at least had the balls to admit that human rights violations did happen in their country. You're telling me this Muslim guy, during the height of the 9/11 scare, and who is believed to have killed someone, just got brought to the station, not a scratch on him. He even smirks as Ray enters the room. At the very least, you can insinuate that he was intimidated into signing a confession. This guy looks like he's more than happy to confess. Who cares? It's only life in prison. Ray confronts his rival, who tells him the guy in the photo is working for him as a snitch in the mosque, and he brought him to the company picnic in an effort to stay on his good side. He wants to keep him a secret, but after some convincing, he gives him his info. Sounds like an interesting dilemma. How do you go about arresting a criminal whose actions might stop a larger scale crime from happening? Well, Billy's solution would be to just cover up the whole thing. He goes so far as to outright agree with his own villain.
And one of the things that I kept saying to Michael on the set before every take was, don't forget, you're right. You're absolutely right.
I don't want to spoil the original story just yet, but let's just say it would not agree. No joke, they are literally complete opposites on this issue. This isn't even Billy's spiciest take. My man would give up anything for a crumb of national security.
If someone had come to me and offered me the deal that was, I will guarantee you there will never be another attack on US soil, but you're gonna have to give up your civil liberties, and Mark Johnson's, and everyone else's, I would have said, okay, take them.
Do you maybe want to consult with Mark before you give away all his rights?
Like, if I want to smack the shit out of him, my man gonna smack the shit out of him. And if I shoot, my man gonna shoot. And if I gotta die, my man dying with me. Like, that's just how it is. Like, my people is right for me, no matter what.
Also, instead of going to his mom's house, they go to his girlfriend's house. I mean, he was in the picture with him, I guess. But why is this the first location you investigate? Why not his own house? And if it was vacated, then show us that. In the original, they went to his mother's house because they were searching for letters he was sending her, on the small chance that something he wrote could place him at the scene of the crime, or reveal his new location. In the remake, they're just looking for more information on him, I guess. And what they end up finding is a comic book. The immediate reaction should be to just put it away. But no, I just gotta read one more page. Letters aren't hard evidence, but they can be used as evidence. What case could you build from just some comic book he wrote? But fuck it, they end up taking it cause it's that important. Also, their escape has no cool shots, they just run out the back door. Great. Bumpy reveals he has the comic book, which makes Ray mad, and they have a little banter. Now, I will mention that, aside from a few moments, Bumpy works as a decent comic relief character, mainly because Dean Norris himself is a pretty funny guy.
Heard you watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I mean, what's really bizarre is the fact you get no bitches.
However, Bumpy is still a cheap imitation of Sandoval. Sure, they have the same joke.
Banco de esperma, sección préstamos,
Erectile dysfunction hotline. How can I direct your call?
Not at all. Have a good day.
But they also strip him of any character traits that make him unique. We're shown that Sandoval is so irresponsible and he spends all his money drinking to the point that it ruins his marriage. So it makes sense that he wouldn't take his job very seriously. We're actively shown Sandoval's moronic actions. But in the remake, we have to be told Bumpy's a moron.
You really are a moron, Bumpy, you know that?
But calling Sandoval a moron is kind of a disservice to him. As we'll see later on, he's pretty smart and an integral part to the investigation, with his own serious character-defining moments. You could legitimately take Bumpy out of this story and nothing would fundamentally change, which is not something you can say about the original story. Speaking of which, why don't we go back to that film already? Unfortunately, the letters don't offer much information, and worse yet, their boss finds out about their little escapade. While they thought they were being sneaky, the locals immediately saw them as suspicious. Once again, Sandoval's alcoholism is reinforced.
Lo que llamó la atención fue que uno de ellos entró al almacén del pueblo, saludó muy amablemente, pidió una botella de Old Smuggler y se la fue tomando del pico por la vereda. ¿Le doy la descripción del sujeto?
Hay que negarlo, Benjamín, ¿eh? Yo no fui, yo no estuve, yo no sé.
No hables más, nunca más en tu vida.
This event also puts a strain on the relationship between Irene and our main character. She helps prevent him from getting a harsher punishment, but also demands he stop working on the case and put it into the archives. During this conversation, she also mentions she has a boyfriend.
Una duda, si me permite. ¿Cuál es su sonrisa irresistible? Porque me parece que no la conozco.
Es lógico, la uso con mi novio como corresponde.
And that becomes a topic of conversation in the present, as they look through photos of her engagement announcement that took place a week after their fight. We learn that she's married and has kids now, and we also see just how different she is from Esposito. Whereas he is always obsessing over the past, she's moved on and lives in the present.
Mi vida entera fue mirar para adelante. Atrás no es mi jurisdicción.
Back in the past, our main character comes across Morales sitting alone at the train station. He reveals he's been scoping out train stations after work for the past year on the chance that he might come across his wife's killer. Unsurprisingly, his life has been consumed with solving the case, trying to find his own justice. However, this very obsession begins to overshadow the memory of his own wife.
El día que la mató, me hizo un té con limón, Liliana. Me había escuchado toser toda la noche y me dijo que me iba a hacer bien. Y después empezó a dudar. Y no sé si fue té con limón o té con miel lo que me dio. Y ya no sé si es un recuerdo o el recuerdo de un recuerdo lo que me va quedando, ¿se da cuenta?
A future filled with nothing. This conversation prompts him to ask Irene to open the case again. However, the way he starts the conversation makes it sound like he's confessing his feelings for her. But when Sandoval enters the room, it becomes clear he's here to talk business. They talk about the desperation Morales has for solving a case he doesn't know has been closed. When they start to mention the love he feels for his wife, the camera solely focuses on her gaze. By this point, it should be pretty obvious that Irene, on some level, has feelings for Esposito. She might try to hide it, but her eyes reveal the truth. And if that wasn't enough, this scene sneaks a rose onto her desk. And during their conversation, it's only ever on top of Irene and Esposito. Sorry, Sandoval. The film characterizes Irene as kind of a conformist. She has feelings for our main character, but does very little to pursue them. She's critical of her boss, but doesn't do much to challenge his authority. She lives her life by the numbers, following the rules. These are her moral beliefs, and they're directly challenged by the presence of the Morales case. Legally speaking, this case has nothing, no leads. It should be closed because it's going nowhere. But that's not right. There's no justice in that. A man is throwing away his life in the vain pursuit of solving a shelved case. And if you can help him, albeit illegally, do you take the risk? Well, surprisingly, she does. Esposito finds his partner back in the bar, but this time he isn't drunk. Instead, he's finally deciphered the letters. He begins by talking about how everyone has passions, things they obsess over. For Sandoval, it's alcohol. For Esposito, it's Irene. And for Gomez, it's soccer. After going over the letters with some friends, they realize he constantly references soccer players and teams in his writing. Someone who's so passionate about soccer has to go to a game at some point, and that's where they plan to find him. Sandoval ends this scene with a pretty raw line.
El tipo puede cambiar de todo, de cara, de casa, de familia, de novia, de religión, de Dios. Pero hay una cosa que no puede cambiar, Benjamín. No puede cambiar de pasión.
And the shot ends on his face, with emphasis on his eyes. This then leads into the best scene of the film. I know we're halfway through the film by now, but seriously, if you haven't already, you should experience this and the rest of the film on your own. Don't worry, I'll wait. Okay, welcome back. So this film employs the Birdman effect, where they take several different shots and cut them together to make the scene seem continuous. Within this scene, we go from an aerial shot, to the crowd, to a close quarters chase scene, then to a ledge jump into his arrest on the field itself. It's awesome, and done so seamlessly. A feat that's even more impressive when you notice how much work was done behind the scenes. Harnesses, helicopters, and CGI, oh my. Another great aspect of the film has to be the score, with this scene being a great example. Just listen to this opening. This was composed by Federico Husid and Emilio Caderesh. It begins loud and bombastic, and then shifts to a more dramatic orchestral piece. It's clear classical music had great inspiration on this score, with the opening being reminiscent of Chopin's Nocturne. It's clear that Campanella and the composers had a specific tone in mind when making this film, and they execute it to perfection. So yeah, all around amazing scene. Gotta wonder how the remake is going to attempt all of this. Well, buckle up now fellas, cause we're going over to the remake, and it's gonna take a while. We're back in the present. They get confirmation with this guy's parole officer that he's definitely the same guy from the past. However, his hobbies don't include making comic books or watching baseball. Instead, it's horses. Does it also say he has a YouTube channel? Cause I think I've cracked the case. So they're clearly attempting the same passion idea from the original, as we later learn the man had a passion for baseball, but at the same time neglecting its purpose in the story, because, spoiler alert, this is not their guy, and they should be realizing this right here, cause they don't have the same interests. Like yeah, realistically people's hobbies change over the years, but why even include this theme from the original? Jess waits for Ray at a bar and sees a vision of her daughter. She questions Ray on why he's so obsessed with this case, and we learn that he feels guilty because he was going to meet her that night to discuss Jess's birthday party, and then just didn't go. Now, I've gone over the neat details of the original, but I have to give some credit to the remake. Campanella may have snuck in a rose to illustrate the love between two characters, but Billy Boy here snuck in a Diet Coke bottle that changes sides depending on the camera angle so that the label is always in frame. Now that's what I call artistic expression. Now we're back in the past. Again, Billy, can you structure your film better, please? We recreate the fight scene between our main characters, except Claire has barely any screen time and her beliefs aren't as fleshed out. I don't feel anything for either of these characters. Her scolding literally consists of, "Hey, don't punch your coworker." Morales puts her on the case, and she believes they arrested the right guy. Wait, hold up. Do you see what's wrong with this image? This film has been beating us over the head with this whole 9/11 scare. But this guy was arrested before that even happened. In fact, this whole event is supposed to take place in 2002. Why does it say 2001? This isn't for a different crime either. The charge is literally right there and it's pending investigation. Billy, did you not revise this? Pause the original and you might find some cool details that add to your understanding of the story. Pause this film and you'll find glaring mistakes. Their fight is cut short by Jess entering the room. They try hiding evidence from her because she can't touch it, or else it can't be used. But she does it anyways. Not like it could be used as legitimate evidence anyway. The action of her reading the book prompts a flashback of her, Ray, and her daughter discussing Ray's crush on Claire. This is also why this prop was, quote-unquote, important enough to be shown in the opening. It was just a thing he held one time while they were talking. That's it. Now, credit where credit is due, this memory is actually taking place in the story itself, so it will flow into the next scene. So let's play a game. Whose memory is this? Is it A, Jess, remembering a happy memory with her daughter? Or is it B, Ray, remembering how close he was with this family? Comment down below, let me know what you think. But no cheating, got it? Okay, cool. The correct answer is neither of these two. It's actually Claire's memory. A character who is not even in the fucking scene. No, this is not a bit. Look at how they transition this scene.
Claire.
How else do I interpret this? Do you not see a structural problem with this one, Billy? Come on! Anyway, these two almost immediately make up again. There's no romantic tension, there's no moral debate, she just lets him do whatever he wants, so long as she isn't involved. Billy, where's the drama, the love? Your muscular remake is as dull as dirt. Some of you might think I'm not being fair to the remake since I actively analyze the conversations in the original, but not the remake. But there's legitimately nothing I can analyze here. All they talk about is her fiance's job. No, really, that's it. In the original, Irene first brings up her partner as a response to Esposito's attempt at flirting. And in the next scene, when mentioning her husband, there are slight pauses and facial expressions that make us question her love for him. The remake will sometimes attempt this, but it's always undercut by the main plot. I get it, you're trying to make less of a romance, more of a thriller. But why do we still have these scenes then? You're just making a half-baked romance, and you still haven't added anything thrilling yet. Actually, pardon me, we've reached the horse derby scene. Since this guy loves horses, the PO suggests they check out the stables. There they find and confront their suspect.
Nice work on the face, Pac-Man. I like it.
You are?
Just for fun, let's remember this guy has a southern accent. Might be important for later. Generally speaking, most effective chase scenes usually involve high speed and movement, cool camera angles and cinematography, and maybe an obstacle or two that impede our characters' movements. Okay, well this scene has none of that. It takes place in a narrow hallway, all in one direction. So to compensate, we get 100 cuts per second. Wow, so thrilling. I can really feel the muscle on this one. The guy escapes, so they talk to a worker there who sees him frequently.
The guy got a name? I don't talk to him. I don't like the way he looks at the horses.
Si, senor, he was giving fuck me eyes to the horses. So they give him their number in case he comes back. Now we're back in 2002 again, and these two have another awkward conversation that implies they have a crush on each other, I guess. For reference, we're past the awkward phase by the 11-minute mark in the original. We are over 50 minutes in here, and we're still doing this.
And it was a moment when we were shooting it where Chiwetel pulled me aside and said, "Is there anything creepy about the fact that I'm in her office and she's not there?"
Just take this out of the film. It would make it shorter and flow better. It wouldn't fix the film, but I'd be sitting here for less time watching it. So Morales takes him aside and tells him he's an idiot for breaking into someone's house and stealing a comic book.
You just surveil whomever you wish.
My sense was that your enthusiasm for the target was low, sir.
I'll tell you what's lower. My enthusiasm for witnessing another 9/11.
Another one? The first one hasn't even happened yet. Okay, so now we're back in the present, and finally fleshing out our characters in the same way as the original.
I think you like looking back more than I do. I don't have the time for it.
Okay. Let's look forward.
Okay, let's.
They're saying the same thing, but the impact just isn't there. There's no emphasis on the facial expressions or the emotions revealed with their eyes. Instead, we just gloss over this part. We speedrun through all the important character bits, but come to a grinding halt for moments like this.
Is there anything
Well, I was just gonna see if you wanted me to walk you to your car again.
Oh. I wasn't ready to leave yet.
Neither was I.
Why? All this scene amounts to is Claire telling him to stop the investigation and Ray saying, "Nope."
Nope.
And yeah, that's it. I'm not kidding. Watch the last seconds for yourself.
Get out. I mean it. Go home.
I can't.
Also, we get this great transition.
9/11 was just the beginning. Protect your home. Please, protect your family.
Hey guys, remember 9/11 is going to be bad. He meets Bumpy at a bar who says he's found a new lead with Jess's help. So, take it away, Jess.
Hey, Jess.
I hate the death penalty.
Who the starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
Once again, the remake is trying to cover the basic themes and ideas as the original, but instead of making it feel like the natural progression of a conversation, it's just brought up out of nowhere. Oh great, we're speedrunning the themes too. Listen, the lack of subtlety in this film is not the worst thing in the world. It really isn't. The original film isn't entirely subtle itself. But for this film in particular, we know for a fact there was a better way of conveying this information. So it makes this film feel lazy in comparison, like I'm getting the SparkNotes version of this story. And let's not forget, this character-defining dialogue is happening an hour into this film, as opposed to 25 minutes. So forget my speedrun comment, we are taking our damn sweet time here and adding nothing in the process.
What are we doing here, guys?
My thoughts exactly. So now we're doing the same name revelation scene, switching out the Racings players with LA Dodgers players. Also, instead of the partner character consulting his friends to figure it out, we have Jess figure this one out, which creates its own problem. In the original, neither of these characters has any knowledge of soccer, so it takes an outside source with knowledge of the players to understand the letter. So, which character has extensive knowledge on the LA Dodger? It's Bumpy. It's the guy who already had the comic book and was already reading it. Okay, I get what Billy's trying to do here. He wants Julia Roberts' character to have a more active role in the story compared to the original. That's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But again, he does not commit to the bit. Cause I guess Bumpy also figured it out. I mean, he's the one explaining it.
Monster that Mally and Sherry are chasing is orange and black. You know, the colors worn by that team up north. Think I'd have noticed that a little sooner.
This is such a confusing change, cause he literally didn't have to do anything to make it work. He could have not made that line for Bumpy, make Jess the person that's into sports, and I would have nothing to say. Trust me, I usually don't care about plot holes or plot conveniences at all. But all I'm doing is taking the information that is deliberately being told to me, comparing it to the story it's trying to say, and concluding that this film is a complete mess. Not that I already didn't know that. Okay, let's quickly move on. We get the same passion conversation. Jess's passion is her daughter, Ray's passion is her crush on Claire, I guess, and Bumpy's passion is nothing, cause he has no notable character traits other than being goofy and liking baseball. And if they said his passion was baseball, while also not being able to solve the comic book, I would have lost my fucking mind. They also emphasize that passions don't change.
Passions are like maps. He can quit his job, he can change his name, he can dump his car, but I will still find him.
Which now makes it extra confusing as to why future Ray tracked down the horse lover who never even mentioned baseball. But whatever, I guess. Now we've reached the moment you've all been waiting for. How did they remake the one-take chase scene? Well, to the surprise of no one, they didn't even try doing it. They took probably the most iconic scene from this film and turned it into another generic, by-the-numbers action scene. Right off the bat, the energy of the scene is nowhere close to matching the original. I run the risk of starting a culture war in my comments, so I'm gonna say this up front, I'm not hugely invested in any sport. Zelcher, who's your pick for March Madness? Which sport is that one? I don't remember. Basketball, you fool. I don't know, I don't watch sports. The opinion you're about to hear is made by an uninformed film nerd. With that said, I think soccer is a more visually interesting sport than baseball, at least in this scene. Let me explain. When the camera descends into the stadium, we immediately follow the players. We're following the action of the game. The remake attempts this shot, but it doesn't work because baseball is a very stationary game. Just look at how the actual sports are played. There's a lot of back and forth movement in soccer, so the camera has to film a much wider area, similar to the original shot. But in baseball, the camera is way closer and over the shoulder of the pitcher, cause that's where all the action is. But now, this shot doesn't work because now the action is too far away. You can't just change the sport in your screenplay and call it a day. You have to make alterations to the camera work to make the new scene work. In the original, we close in on someone lining up his goal shot, the best, most suspenseful part of a soccer match. But in the remake, we close in on the pitcher talking to his teammates. Is that the best part of baseball? You know, there's actually a really simple change that could fix this problem, and that's just flipping the scene. Have it start with the guy hitting the ball and following it over the field. You know, following the action of the game. Here's another opinion that might rustle some jimmies. The announcers both set very different tones. The soccer announcer is loud and drumming up hype for this match.
Linda noche para la práctica del fútbol. Huracán recibe el Tomás Traducó al Racing Club de Avellaneda en esta noche espléndida para la práctica del deporte.
Meanwhile, the baseball announcer is just talking, laying out the facts of the match and the team. Really on the edge of my seat here, Billy. And finally, let's talk about the music. Because, fun fact, both films have the same composer. In the original, the score is this exciting and bombastic orchestrated piece, while the remake has the same boring action music you find in every generic blockbuster. It's clear what kind of direction Campanella gave his composers to produce such an impactful score. Meanwhile, it's clear Billy gave no direction for his composers other than making it thrilling and muscular. Por favor, Billy, explícame qué tipo de música quieres para tu película.
You know, this more muscular, more American version.
Por el amor de Dios, di algo diferente. Once again, I get the impression that Billy thinks throwing in the same elements from the original will just magically work for him. But by now, it's clear he did not understand what made these specific elements work so effectively. One film has effectively set up the suspense of the scene, and the other is just boring. Speaking of boring, let's look at the rest of the scene. So, just like the previous chase scene, this one uses an excessive amount of cuts to compensate for the lack of meaningful action. Even the Old Boy remake at least tried recreating their own one-take fight scene. It's not good, but at least I can respect them for trying. How do you manage to do worse than this? So, Ray makes himself known before he's even near Marzin, he escapes, then goes after him, and what the fuck is this shot? Are you trying to make me nauseous? You know, a shot like this would make sense if the scene was trying to look like one take, but oops, we're in the wrong film for that. They run around the same locations. Eventually the guy jumps off a ledge, but cushions his fall with a random guy. And then Bumpy almost dies doing the same thing. Sorry Chiwetel, but I can't be in this awful film for a second longer. I'm ending it all here. Why? I take my previous point back. I guess we do get to see how stupid Bumpy is. There are also some very obvious, badly cut sequences, like this one.
Mark Johnson's least favorite cut in the entire movie. He always felt that Chiwetel shouldn't stop there. I said, yeah, and then just kept leaving it in.
Everyone told him how bad this looked, but Billy still left it in the film. Amazing. Okay, now here comes the real travesty. You know how the original ended with the guy running onto the field? It's a scene of pure spectacle and a great way to end the chase. Well, in the remake, we never even make it there. I can forgive omitting the one take, but that is such a cool moment and shot. Why would you not include that in your film? You have completely massacred this scene, and I cannot forgive you for this. Let's quickly get back to the original before I end it all too. Gomez is now in custody. Irene still has her doubts about the arrest, since the only evidence they have are old photos of him. During their argument, Esposito rips a button off her shirt by accident. Undeterred, he begins the interview. When asked about what train he takes to the capital, he says none. The scene pauses there for a bit, so that the audience can reflect on Morales, the man who spent over a year of his life waiting by the train for a chance encounter with him. And it was all for nothing. He lived a life waiting for nothing. Esposito can't get any solid information out of him, and it's starting to seem like Gomez was just a victim of circumstance. Irene comes in to ask him to wait for the judge to arrive. All the while, Gomez stares at the opening in her shirt. She notices malicious intent behind Gomez's eyes and realizes that he might really be the killer. So she takes the chance to talk to him, or rather insult him. She starts explaining why he can't be the killer. The victim was severely beaten, but this man is physically weak. As she continues, she gets more aggressive, even telling him his dick is small, knowing it would get to him. It culminates to the point where Gomez actually shows her his dick. What he doesn't realize is that he's exposing himself in more ways than one. Irene berates him again and he punches her while saying,
¡Puta de mierda! ¿Sabes cómo me la cogí, eh? ¿No sabes cómo me la cogí? ¡Esa hija de puta! ¡No tienes ni idea de cómo me la cogí!
This whole scene is a great character moment for Irene, going from someone following orders to taking an active role in what she thinks is the right thing to do. They use his outburst as a confession and are able to arrest him. We then transition into our main character telling Morales about the news. You can't hear the words, but you can understand the feelings based on the performance. Do you guys know what Sonder is? It's the realization that people live just as complex lives as you do. Of course, I feel this in real life, but I also feel it while watching films. And I think this scene is a perfect example. Everyone at this station is just living their life normally. And unbeknownst to them, just a few feet away, a man receives honestly life-changing news and they'll never know what it was or what the man has been through. And I think it adds some tragic beauty to this scene. Unfortunately, this isn't where the story ends. We're back in 2009. Our main character is trying to tip over a photo he has, and while doing so, has another vision of the past. He comes back to his senses when Irene calls him, asking to read the novel when it's done. And so he goes back to work, and we go back to the past. Some time has passed since the last event. Our main characters are watching the news as Isabel Perón is giving a speech. After Perón's death, his wife took over as president of the country. In the background, they see that Gomez is one of her bodyguards. They confront their old rival about this, and he admits he bailed him out so he could work for him. A move made out of spite for Espósito.
¿Usted se da cuenta de lo que está diciendo? Es un asesino convicto y confeso.
Será, sí, pero también es una persona inteligente y de coraje. Capaz de entrar en una casa y hacer lo que hay que hacer. Además, la vida personal de él, honestamente, ¿no? Con todos los subversivos que hay dando vuelta, nos tiene sin cuidado. Si vamos a ir con los buenos solamente.
Romano and Gomez are most likely working for the Argentine Anti-Communist Alliance, a far-right political terrorist group that became active during Isabel Perón's presidency. The group is linked with the murder and disappearance of over 1,000 people, including leftist politicians, historians, students, anyone they deemed a political enemy. The group was formed in secret by José López Rega, with Rodolfo Almirón allegedly being the chief operating officer. Almirón was also the head of Isabel Perón's personal security, which is most likely why Gomez acts as her bodyguard. With the group gaining more political power, there's not much these characters can do to fight him. Now, this information is not necessary to understand the film. An international audience could easily identify this as corruption in the government and legal system, but looking into this context provides a deeper understanding of the film. The scene ends with the rival mentioning how different these two are.
¿Por qué no la dejas en paz si no tiene nada que ver con vos? ¿Eh? Ella es abogada, vos perito mercantil. Ella es joven, vos viejo. Ella es rica, vos pobre. Ella es Menéndez Hastings. Y vos sos Espósito, o sea, nada. Ella es intocable, vos no.
As the two leave, Gomez stops and enters their elevator. Once weak, he now stands tall with power. He even intimidates them by reloading his pistol, brandishing it like a phallic symbol. A callback to what he did in the interview. The scene ends with him leaving and giving them one last glare, with his eyes. Gomez is given the bad news, with Espósito mentioning they can't even get near him, insinuating they can't kill him. Once again, the death penalty is discussed.
¿Y si pudiera, para qué? ¿Qué haría? ¿Qué gano metiéndole 4 tiros? Voy en cana hasta que me muero. Gómez, antes de llegar al piso, ya está libre de todo. Y yo me paso 50 años metido en una celda envidiándole la suerte.
Ultimately, Morales accepts the situation as unfair, but has to move on. Irene finds Espósito reminiscing about the case again, and decides to confront him about the obvious feelings between them. They agree to meet after work, but those plans are interrupted by Sandoval getting into a bar fight. Espósito tries to contact Sandoval's wife, but their phone doesn't work, so he leaves him in a chair and goes to bring his wife over. When they return, he notices his door is broken. A photo of his is face down, and he finds Sandoval murdered in his bed. Believing this was an attack by either Gomez or his rival, Irene makes plans to move him to Jujuy with one of her relatives. Jujuy is practically in the corner of Argentina and neighbors only one province. It borders both Chile and Bolivia, making it easy to escape the country if needed, which is what many citizens did during the military dictatorship. The two attempt a kiss, but don't go through with it, realizing it's too late to even try. The opening scene plays out once again, but now we see it clearly. He continued looking at her as she became smaller in his eyes, but ever bigger in his heart. let me explain the meaning behind this opening. The opening is messy because the memory itself was messy. After so many years, it was starting to slip away. A similar thing happens to Morales, as he forgets the final moments he shared with his wife. These two were starting to forget what gave their life meaning, and now ventured into a future filled with nothing. Morales all but accepts his new reality, but not Esposito. He clings on to the hope that things can change, even if it happened so far in the past. And that has been the driving force behind this story. He wants to understand the past and why things turned out like they did, and to do that, he had to start from the beginning. And now that we have this memory, it's not a satisfying ending. Irene even says as much after finishing the novel. Things ended terribly for everyone involved. But still, 25 years later, Irene continues to allude to her feelings for him.
La parte esa, cuando el tipo se va a Jujuy.
Sí, ¿qué
El tipo llorando como si fuera un desgarro.
Sí, ¿qué?
Y ella corriendo por el andén como sintiendo que se iba el amor de su vida.
Bueno.
Y tocándose las manos a través del vidrio como si fueran una sola persona.
Pues
y ella
sí.
llorando, como si supiera que le esperaba un destino de mediocridad y desamor. Casi cayéndose en las vías, como queriendo gritar un amor que nunca se había animado a confesar.
Sí, sí fue así, ¿o no fue así?
¿Por qué no me llevaste con vos?
Does life have to stay this way, or can we try to rectify the injustice of the past? Well, our main characters are going to give it a try.
No quiero dejar pasar todo de nuevo. ¿Cómo puede ser? ¿Cómo puede ser que no haga nada? Hace 25 años que me pregunto. Y hace 25 años que me contesto lo mismo. Deja, fue otra vida. Ya pasó, ya está, no preguntes, no pienses. No fue otra vida. Fue esta. Ahora quiero entender todo. ¿Cómo se hace para vivir una vida vacía? ¿Cómo se hace para vivir una vida llena de nada? ¿Cómo se hace?
But before we finish this story, let's see how the remake screws it up. So these two are also bickering over the legitimacy of this case.
And Marsden already knows his rights. He's here voluntarily. He'll confess. I gotta work him a little.
Meaning waterboarding?
No, meaning conversation.
You know, it kind of irks me that they mention waterboarding as a way to torture a confession out of somebody, when they could have easily addressed this during a point where it would have made sense and left an impact on the audience. Nah, you see, Argentina did it because their law enforcement was corrupt. But that stuff doesn't happen in America. Not even our bad guys can do bad things. Anyways, he rips off one of her buttons too, and then the interview begins. Ray reads him his rights, and...
That you're here of your own volition.
Volition? It's a great word. I think I'm gonna use it someday.
Wait, what? Okay, so this guy is supposed to be Turkish, I guess? You could really tell by his love of the LA Dodgers. Actually, that's not even that bad. Plenty of people can enjoy the cultures of other countries. No, the thing that makes this so egregious is that the guy they're looking for in the present has a distinctly southern accent.
You are? Oh, yeah. I came to the picnic for 10 minutes, maybe. Music was shit. You are? I'm trying to do good. You are?
When your guy goes from a Turkish Muslim to a furry from Texas, I think it might be time to ask some questions. Oh, and let's not forget the stunning performance this guy gives.
I'm riding on the sickest sleeper cell in LA. I get spotted chatting with 2 cops. I'm a dead man.
What did you study to get this accent? Borat?
You look like Michael Jackson beat it.
I think you raped her and killed her, Pac-Man.
Listen, pussycat, smile a bit.
So then Claire comes in to get objectified by this guy, proving to her he's the killer, and then starts berating him.
And then, of course, there's the bleach. A clear sign of premeditation. Your killer.
I'm sorry, your what?
Your killer.
Are we all doing new accents now? Is Bumpy gonna try some new Mexican slang?
Please, señor Sente! No de, please!
The scene plays out the same way, except Nicole Kidman sounds half asleep the entire time. In the original, Gomez actually had an active role in the scene. You could tell he was getting more vulnerable and angry based on his facial expressions and his eyes. But in the remake, I can't read anything from this guy's face. From start to finish, he just looks annoyed. So when he finally takes out his dick, it feels random, even if both films had the same build-up. The guy punches Claire while confessing to the crime, and then Ray beats him up. So now they're gonna break the news to Jess, and let me warn you, this scene is really bad. Considering what this whole case is about, maybe the meetup location shouldn't be a random park bench in the middle of nowhere during the dead of night. Just a thought, you know? The location in the original actually had some meaning behind it, and surprisingly, this film had a similar location.
So I will be here every night from now on. He'll come here.
So they were actually setting up something here, and then somehow dropped the ball at the last second. The scene is also visually uninteresting. There's a ton of dead space. I'm pretty sure Claire's hair takes up more of the screen than the actual performance itself. I mean, it would make some sense to get a POV shot from Claire's perspective, but no, I guess not. Obviously, I don't get the same feeling of Sonder. I actually don't feel anything. This scene is just plain awful. Thanks, Billy. I hate it. So now Morales is big mad because they essentially beat a confession out of someone. You know, this could have actually been a good moment if it was like the original and the first suspect was actually tortured. Because Ray begins the story angry at Seifert's corrupt tactics, but by the end, during his own interrogation, he employs the very same tactics. It would have offered a moment of reflection for the character and the audience. And since this doesn't happen in the original, it would have been a way to cover the same themes, but in a different way. But that doesn't happen here, so now Ray just looks like a violent asshole. Come to think of it, Ray has been the most violent character in this film, all in service of making it more muscular. So because the guy works as a spy, and their case is built off a comic book, it gets thrown out, and the guy becomes...
That boy is officially untouchable!
Interesting choice of words there, So these two are having a fight. Again.
Well, it's your case,
We
Claire.
don't have a case.
What do you mean, no case? Then why did you go along with bullying this dude if you didn't believe he was actually guilty?
You want to tell Jess that, or should I?
You know, Ray, it's kind of in poor taste for you to weaponize this woman's anger over her daughter dying as if it were a threat. Are you not supposed to be her friend? Our protagonist, everyone. And no, this is not a character flaw of his. Each time he does it, it's followed by a pause like it was some sort of mic drop moment.
You got a name?
You want me to send Jess in here to ask you?
Thanks, Billy. Very cool. Uh-oh, look who it is. So this guy tries to be menacing, but his face is completely beaten up and Ray has a gun. So there's no real danger here. This scene doesn't depict a change in power or anything. He's just being a cocky asshole, and I feel nothing. So now Jess comes aboard, and Ray subtly brings up the death penalty.
Let's kill him.
Jess turns it down cause it's not true justice, and then the scene ends with this line.
You're both working for a liar.
That's the trouble with you, Ray. You think that matters.
What the fuck does that mean? Like, I've combed through this movie thoroughly, and I can't think of a good interpretation of this line at all. Ray is right. Morales is deliberately trying to slow the investigation into your daughter's murder through cover-ups, which is bad, but also doesn't matter, I guess? To you? Her mother? Or do you mean that even if Morales was a good guy, this case still wouldn't be solved? Cause I don't think that's true. Or do you mean that this whole investigation never mattered, cause at the end of the day, your daughter is still dead? I guess that one makes sense, but it feels like kind of a weird place to make that point in the script. On her way back home, Jess has another flashback of her daughter. And you know what? It's actually a decent scene, cause it's revealed here that Jess was the one who really wanted her to be at the company picnic. Which is why this whole situation happened. Good job, Billy, you did it. I'm so proud of you. We get a really short scene of Ray trying to confess his love, which is interrupted by someone finding the killer's van. And uh-oh, it's up in flames. The film implies that Morales and Seifert were in on this and had access to the van, but if that's the case, why did they not burn it beforehand, and why would they do it in public? Who knows, and at this point, who cares? They share a very, very brief moment together where they hold hands, and that's the scene. You might be wondering if this story can get any worse than this. Well, yes, it can. But before that, let's finish off the original. So we've covered the story of the case and what happened to the characters in the end, all except Gomez and Morales. Our main characters try looking up where they live and find that Gomez is apparently missing. But they do find Morales. Esposito makes a trip to his house, which is now in a more rural area. They exchange an awkward hello, and then enter the house to catch up on their lives. We learn that Morales still works at the same bank and never got remarried. Morales reads the now finished draft of the novel. He doesn't dislike it, but does advise he stop writing it and just put the story behind him. However, our main character still tries to pry into his life, asking how he could so easily move on.
Se pasó un año buscando un tipo que conocía solamente por fotos, lo largan y usted no hace nada.
Sí, me pasé un año yendo a estaciones de trenes, lo agarran y lo sueltan, ¿qué quiere que haga?
Y ya está, se terminó.
Sí.
Se pasa el resto de su vida poniendo sellitos.
Mire quién habla.
Usted es mejor que yo.
Eventually, he gets upset and demands he leave his house. Before doing so, Esposito mentions Sandoval's death again. This time, he focuses on his photos being knocked over. He believes Gomez ordered the hit on him, but wasn't actually present himself. So the group who entered his apartment didn't know what he looked like. Sandoval must have realized this and turned over any photo with his friend's face on it, claiming himself to be him. He willingly surrendered his life so that his friend could live on, and he feels indebted to his actions. What began as a standard investigation has engulfed his life and become a personal matter for him too.
Lo último que me dijo Pablo la noche que lo mataron. No te preocupes, Benjamín. Ya lo vamos a agarrar a ese hijo de puta. Y lo voy a agarrar. Si está vivo, lo voy a agarrar.
After hearing this, Morales decides to tell him the truth. He knew that Gomez would take out Esposito eventually, so he tracked him down, kidnapped him, and then killed him. With the deed done, there's no justice left for them to pursue. Esposito leaves, but starts to have doubts about this story. The biggest problem stems from the idea of passions. Morales was so dead set on giving him a life sentence. Why would he then kill him? So he decides to sneak back and finally discovers what really happened. For the past 25 years, Morales has been keeping Gomez as his prisoner, personally giving him a life sentence. Beyond just that, it's also been solitary confinement, as Morales has never even spoken to him. Mentioning the eyes has been kind of a meme in this review, but yeah, it's important here too. It's one of the few times the eyes and face have been obscure to us. We're uncertain about his thoughts and feelings on what he's seeing, and we're never explicitly told either. A great thing about this scene is the uncertainty. We see Morales' distressed reaction as he leaves, worried of what will happen now that he knows. But we never find out, and I'll talk about that later. We see Esposito finally get his life on track. He even finishes the book. He felt too guilty to visit Sandoval's grave before, but now leaves him flowers. And finally, he gets the courage to tell Irene how he truly feels, which she is all too happy to hear. It's a very bittersweet ending, especially when you connect it with the history of Argentina. In the 1970s, corruption rose to prominence as extremist groups gained power. Many civilians were affected, but had no way to seek justice, with many forced to leave the country and start a new life. In 1985, under democratically elected President Raúl Alfonsín, efforts were made to prosecute those responsible for their crimes. However, laws such as the full stop law and due obedience effectively blocked any investigation into these human rights violations. I once read a review where someone said it was unrealistic for a government to pardon and hire a violent criminal like this. Well, that's history for you. For years, people just had to accept this reality and move on. But some people still wanted answers, and they got them. In 2003, under Nestor Kirchner's administration, these laws and pardons were effectively deemed null and void. Orchestrators of state-sponsored terrorism could now be punished. There's a lot of purposeful ambiguity to this ending because there's a lot of ambiguity concerning these cases. Even now, these crimes are still being judged as recent as 2022. The ambiguity of this ending, concerning Morales' jail, and the relationship between our main characters, is left up to our own interpretation. We get to decide how this story ends, the same way we decide how history is written. That's why we end on these two characters, one obsessed with looking forward and the other backwards. We can never fix the past, but we also can't fix our future unless we learn from our past mistakes. These two are a perfect match, but will their relationship be successful? Will Argentina's trials be successful? Will our own efforts be successful? Well, that's up to us to decide. Okay, enough with the sentimental crap, Zelcher. I want to see something muscular. Okay then, let's see how the Americans did this. We're back in the present, and our characters are having drinks when Ray suddenly gets a text from the horse place. He finds the suspect there and follows him to a warehouse while calling for backup. He tries to be sneaky, but uh-oh. So he gets beat up by this gang, the suspect actually speaks, and even though he clearly has a different accent,
Pac-Man, you still don't remember me? I'm Pac-Man. I'm in a video game.
Ray still thinks he's the guy. So Bumpy and Seaford break in to save him, but uh-oh, the bad guy gets shot, and then dies. Oops. Rest in pepperoni. Jess is also there, and after being shown the suspect, she doesn't believe it's him. That said, Ray still hits him for no reason. Again, our protagonist, everyone. The two fight over what just happened, with Jess getting really angry.
Did you look at Seaford's face? Because he's dead.
Well, he had to answer for Carolyn, too.
Don't you ever say her name again.
You know, her anger is actually foreshadowing my anger. Ray goes to visit Claire, and she cleans his wound when her husband comes in.
Sure, move him in. He's been living here for the last 12 years anyway.
What do you mean by that? I know this insinuates Claire has been reminiscing on her time with Ray and can't get him out of her head, but did you two really share anything memorable? These two were fighting constantly. They were never on the same page, and the few times they did talk, it was the most awkward, cringe shit imaginable. What exactly about him do you reminisce about? You barely knew him. After getting a call, the two go visit Jess. Now, Jess is going to make the same revelation as the original, revealing she killed the original suspect years ago. However, using that twist ending in this film really pisses me off. Let's start with this line.
My guys are doing widows and orphans for Seaford. Might not be a bad idea for you to contribute.
Yeah.
Lady, are you really going to guilt this man into thinking his actions caused his death? 'Cause, hot take, it's not his fault. It's yours. Right from the start, he told you what he was planning to do. You knew this was futile, and you still egged him on. In fact, you even helped get him a partner. You actively got another innocent person involved. And then you have the audacity to get mad at him for investigating a murder he doesn't know you resolved. You could have told him the truth at any point in the story. But what if he called the police? No, he wouldn't have, because he also suggested you do the same thing. Also, aren't you supposed to be friends? You see your friend struggle in vain to help you find closure, and you just let him suffer? Really? And now, After the man got tortured, after you got another innocent person involved, and this time killed, you still have the audacity to be upset with him. Lady, you are a terrible person. What happened to your daughter was tragic, but I have zero sympathy for you. Great change to the story, Billy. So they both leave her house, but Ray wants to check on her again, and oh my god, she's held him captive this whole time. I like how he drops the plate here, but in the next shot, the food is fine. Didn't want to set up that shot more than once, I see. Gotta love the extra lines Billy puts in here too.
Life sentence, right?
For you, too.
American audiences can't think for themselves, I guess, so we need to hold their hand through every single scene. And finally, in this version, the prisoner is actually killed, instead of leaving it up to our interpretation. And after finishing this film, I kind of envy him right now. The end. Now, I want to make this clear. Changing something like the ending isn't actually bad, but I have to ask, what is the purpose behind this? What idea is it trying to convey now? And that same question goes for the rest of this film. The original had a purpose behind it. There was a point it was trying to make that was integral to the country it was set in. I don't want to make assumptions, but I get the impression that Billy Boy understood this was a film from Argentina, but not that it was about Argentina. He didn't understand what made this film so important for so many people. There's actually a great line from the original that perfectly encapsulates the problems with this remake.
Me dio por el gran novelista, ¿vio?
Sí, tiene que desarrollarlo un poco esto. Parece un memorándum largo.
The themes and ideas from the original are technically there, but they aren't fleshed out beyond just stating they're there. The love story is cut down. The importance of the partner is cut down. The action is less impactful. The story has become a complete mess. A remake should strive to be unique, but when elements are being taken out and replaced with nothing, then what exactly are we supposed to be getting out of this experience? Hollywood remakes of foreign films irk me in particular because their goal is to spread a hidden gem to a wider audience, but it always has the opposite effect. There are people who will watch this and think that it's so bad they won't even seek out the original. I genuinely consider the act of Americanizing films to be a crime against cinema itself. And if no one is going to punish Billy for his crimes, then I'll have to give him a life sentence myself. In Minecraft. Hello, I'm recording this on my phone because I'm too lazy to set up my camera right now, and it's been 4 months of just editing this, and I just want to get it done with. I just want to finish the video and put it out and not have to worry about it anymore. All right. What do I do during these things? I thank you. All right, you the viewer. You ended. Did you get here all the way? I'm wearing my fishnets. I'm doing the eye candy thing that I said I would do in my previous streams for you guys. So I promised this. So if you're here, you're welcome. First things first, I gotta thank the Patreons over here. Should be right around here. The people who support me at the highest tier, which there's only like 2 tiers, but at the highest tier you get your name here, and at the lowest tier you can get all the videos that I put out on Patreon. You have access to it, which is not that many to be honest, but you do get these videos in their original context. That's something, because on YouTube you get hit by the copyright infringements a lot, and I have to edit things around, have to shrink things or put a filter on some things. Those are very extreme cases, but on Patreon you get like the full the original Zelcher director's cut, so to speak. The YouTube version is, well, I don't know yet. I haven't edited that part yet. I haven't edited around the copyright stuff yet. So maybe it's not. Maybe they're both the same version. I don't know. I don't know yet. I've still got like a bit of work to do on this. So you know what? Get through this all quickly. All right, Patreon, you're cool. If you like this video, fucking give it a like. Subscribe if you want to. Leave a comment down below and share the video. I don't usually do that with all my videos. I don't usually say that in all my videos, but I worked on this for 4 months, and I feel like I'm entitled to that now. Listen, I have not deluded myself into thinking that I'm gonna get a return on investment here. 4 months. YouTube thinks my channel is dead. YouTube thinks I'm dead. All right. I can't survive on just stream highlights and and joke videos where I make fun of Spooky Rice. You know, I gotta make actual videos, but now YouTube thinks I'm fucking dead. Whatever. I do it for the love of the game. You know, I do it for you guys. I do it as a hobby. My very long and time-consuming hobby. But yeah. I'm satisfied with how this video turned out. I had a lot of issues doing it, from audio issues to writing a script and then realizing that I had a lot more to explore. There were moments during this process where I was questioning whether it was worth it. It's not worth it, really. If we're talking economically, it's not worth it. But creatively, I was thinking, is this worth it? You know, putting this much effort into something that is not going to be the perfect version I want it to be. Because here's a bad thing for all of you. Here's just a bad thing for you to have. Don't be a perfectionist, because you're gonna take too long. Up until like a few days ago, I genuinely considered re-recording all the audio for this video, which would have delayed it like 4 months from now. You know, maybe even a year. I don't know. But I talked myself out of that because, you know what? Either I can make a perfect version and release it 1 year from now when nobody gives a shit about me anymore, or I could release a satisfactory video and then people can watch it, and then, you know, I can just move on to other things. So I chose that instead. Yeah, even up until like the final moments here, like the past 2 days, I've had a terrible, awful headache and body cramps, and like, you know, just plain body tiredness, and I can only attribute that to one, stress on working on this for so long, and then, you know, the anxiety of like, is it worth it? Will people enjoy this, or will they mock me in the comments? I don't know. New things for the Zelcher channel. I tend to stream every so often now. I try to do every Friday, although it feels more like every other Friday, because I'm always like, hey, I'm gonna cancel the stream tonight. Working on this fucking video. So I'm gonna try and do it every Friday, except this Friday, because this Friday everybody voted for this video to be premiered today. The more I talk, the more work I'm giving myself. So you know what? I'm just gonna end it right there, I guess. Again, thank you for watching. If you've seen like all the way through to this point, fucking thank you. I mean, some of you guys are probably watching this while you're asleep. I know a few people have said that. But hey, now you have an hour-and-a-half thing to watch while you sleep. No switching videos, because I mean, I do that too. I put on a playlist, and I can just put on this video, and by the end of it, you'll fucking be asleep. And if you're not asleep, then go to sleep right now. Do it. Okay, we're gonna end this off with the one thing you guys are actually here for at the end. You guys know it's coming, so why not give it to you guys right now? Here's Jennifer. The camera's probably at a different angle now because I had to stop the video to find her because she hid. She was like, "Oh, Zelcher's recording a video. Time to hide." Isn't that right, Jenny? Oh, you're cute. Zelcher dumb. Also, I looked over the footage again. Like, my hair is a disaster right now. I need to take a rest after I finish this video, but that will happen after it's released. You know, I'll take a short break. I got a lot of things planned in the future. A lot of things planned with her, right? You're gonna be in the videos, right, Jenny? Right? Yeah. All right. Thank you for watching. I said that like 3 times already, but genuinely, if you're at this point in an hour-and-a-half long video, fuck, like you are committed. All right. Thank you. Take care.